Well, hello there. That's right, it is me and I am back. It has been a very, very long time. I think it's coming to almost 2 years since I last uploaded a video. But I think I have a very good reason for that. One of them was I moved house. So that was very stressful. I got a new job and then, there's this other sort of one slightly small thing that happened. I became a dad. Yeah, and if there's any parents watching this video somehow, then you can probably guess what I've been doing for the last year. And that is survival. Not much time to do many hobbies out in this past year. But the idea of making a video was always, in the back of my mind is like, man, I really want to make a video. And as the time went on, that urge, that itch just kept manifesting until it came to finally this. And unfortunately, if you look at the title, it's not exactly the most positive note I'm coming back on. Honestly, it was the only note I could think of to come back on. So outside of the title, which is clearly clickbait, but if you did click on this video because of the title, well, then it was clearly good clickbait. But why would I be making this video? Because for the longest time prior to my absence, well, this channel was dedicated to music, and specifically metal music. We did reactions, we did reviews. So what happened? Well, honestly, when I stepped away, I had a lot of time to do a lot of introspection and not just thinking about the meaning of life and having a whole philosophy moment. No, it was more me thinking about my relationship with music. And if I'm gonna be honest, it sucked. I honestly hated listening to music. By the time I put out my last video, I'd honestly had nothing to say. As far as I was concerned, everything that I was listening to was repetitive and sounding completely identical to one another. And the whole process of making these videos just became more of a chore than anything else, because every time I wanted to listen to a song, there was this thing in the back of my head that kept saying, shouldn't you be considering this for a video instead? Which resulted in one of my favorite pastimes on earth, which was listening to music. I hated it. And sort of to piggyback off this, I sort of came to terms with what was the reasoning behind me having this bad relationship with music. And it kind of just boiled down to how I was actually consuming music. Not just for the sake of creating content for YouTube, but just in general how I was consuming music. And with that, I can actually segue to the actual meaning of this video, which the actual topic of this video is why music streaming sucks. I would have said that in the title, but what I already wrote sounded more shocking and more likely you would click on this video. So yeah, but let's begin. So as we all know, music streaming is pretty ubiquitous at this point when it comes to the ads we see for music streaming. Spotify sponsors a football team, for God's sake, and artists, they don't ask you to go out and buy their album anymore. They just say stream it on all the regular streaming platforms. And for a lot of people, including me at one point, we saw this cost, this monthly fee for unlimited music as a fixed cost that was about the exact same as what you treat your electricity bill or your water bill. And when I was in this boat, I was happy. I could easily justify that this small fee per month would give me unlimited access to Pandora's box of music. And I went as so far as to selling all my CDs, barring my, of course, deluxe edition one. So I was completely in that rabbit hole. But now I no longer utilize streaming. I went from Spotify to Apple Music, and now I'm doing the archaic pastime of going out to an actual shop and buying CDs once more. Now, I do have a free account with Deezer, but I'm gonna explain why later in the video. And it's not just because of discovery. And finally, if I really do struggle to find music, I also do roleplay as a certain eye patch, sword-wielding person who may or may not sail on the ocean. But to really get into depth of why I stopped using streaming and my take on this, it boils down to a few key points. So to kick things off, let's be honest with ourselves. I don't think artists have ever really had it easy when it comes to pursuing their craft, and specifically music artists. And in the year 2026, it's almost insulting. The amount of work an artist has to do to get recognized is ridiculous due to the way that streaming services are designed, which is to make the idea of listening to music as frictionless as possible. So as soon as, let's say, you as a listener decide that this song is not really working out for me or did not pass the vibe check, you should be able to move to the next track as fast as possible, no strings attached. The result of that being is that artists are now slowly having to make songs that are shorter and also getting to the point quicker, because most of us just can't handle the idea of going 5 milliseconds without something big happening. We're clearly way too brain rotted. We can't even handle silence or slow build-ups anymore. It has to get to the point fast and now. And then when you do get noticed, don't expect to be making much money on this either, because the current payout model only really favors the top 10 to 20%. If you even get to a situation where you have enough listeners to even start getting a payout, you might just get enough to really pay for your next meal, if at that. And now I just want to quickly make a point about record labels, because yes, I hate record labels. You probably hate them too, especially on YouTube. They take down every video that even has a smidgen of music in it. But one thing that they did, which I can kind of appreciate looking back now, is that no matter what, whatever album came from a record label, a prominent record label that we know well, we could at least say that the music was good, like quote unquote good, but it was good music. It was well produced. There was money put behind it. The talent was good. And in this day and age, the talent was human. So when the product finally came to your hand and you listened to it, you knew that you were getting a good product. Whereas now we have self-distribution. And now I know what you're thinking. No, I think self-distribution is amazing. There is so many amazing artists that have been created, discovered, and brought to the forefront because they were able to self-distribute and not have to go through the archaic path of being signed by a label. But the issue with that is, since anybody can self-distribute, it means that anybody can self-distribute. And in this day and age, with the humongous advent of generative AI, and specifically generative AI music, well, we're getting a lot of that now in streaming services as well. Diluting what used to be a huge assortment of brand new artists to discover now is being mixed and muddled with all this AI slop. In some cases, this AI slop is even being used in ways of fraud. Malicious uploaders will use AI slop content that they've generated, put it on the platform under somebody else's name to make money off somebody else's recognition, name, talent, whatever. I'm gonna use Spotify for this example. If called out, if you have a big enough platform or you're with a record label that can, make some waves about this problem, well, Spotify doesn't even remove the person who did the fraud. Instead, they just give them another account and let them still stay on the platform. So what it results in is that there's no punishment for doing fraud on these streaming services. That's just not cool. The market share model. This is the most commonly used model in majority of all streaming services. I'm going to explain to you visually why it's not necessarily the best one. So bear with me. So the way that this model works is that it takes your subscription money, 30% of it will go to operation costs of the company in question. We're going to use Spotify for this example because we've been kind of using it for a majority of examples. Then the rest of the 70% is distributed proportionally based off listenership to the rest of the artists. So I'll quickly demonstrate that visually. So if we say our subscription amount is £10, I'm choosing a very round, easy number to work with. We'll say S equals 10. I'm using pounds because I live in the UK. So the way it starts, we're gonna have our pie here. It's a big circle. And I'm actually really happy with that circle. I don't usually draw, so that's win. We have our pie. As I mentioned, 30% will go to operation costs. So we'll just draw that in. So we'll do that. And if we use our £10 subscription, we can say that £3 of that goes to operation costs, OC. I'm just gonna write there for simplicity. And then the rest here is all then put into sort of a communal pool that gets redistributed amongst all the artists. Now, to make things a slightly bit more realistic, I don't know how realistic it's gonna be, I'm gonna use this idea of the Pareto principle or the 80-20 principle, which just means that 80% of one thing goes to 20% of something else. Perfect example of this is 80% of the global wealth goes to 20% of the population. Easy. So with that in mind, we're using 80%. Well, 80% of 70, if my math is correct, is 56%. So about half of this, of our remaining subscription, is gonna go to the top 20%. So that would be about 5.60 pounds, like that. And this will go to the top 20%, which then leaves a very minuscule, I'm gonna use green for this one, a very minuscule amount of, let's say 1.40 remaining for the rest, which is the 80%. So now we can get a picture of how distribution of payouts kind of works. Now the reason why the top 20% will get the majority of the pay is because, well, the top 20% of artists are usually owned or distributed by the 3 major record labels. That would be Universal, EMI, and I think Warner as well, or Sony, one of those, I can't remember. And they're providing the majority of the catalog for Spotify, so they probably made a deal that we want the biggest piece of the pie. But that does mean then the rest of us only get about nothing. The problem with this model, well, let's say you're a local artist. You don't have the reach, the global reach of, let's say, a Taylor Swift, a Drake, Bring Me the Horizon, but you have a strong local scene. A scene where you have a lot of followers, maybe 100, 200, maybe up to 1,000 people in your local area that do love you. And maybe they do exclusively listen to your work on a monthly basis, but it wouldn't even matter because their subscription money would still first get distributed to the top 20% before eventually getting down to you. Unfortunately, when it gets back down to you, it pretty much is nothing. There's nothing, you're not getting anything. 1.40 to be distributed amongst all artists that are in the bottom 80%. Yeah, you're not getting anything. So to give some perspective on how much artists are actually receiving, I'm gonna use a very common set of products in the UK that together create this thing called the meal deal. So the meal deal, you can kind of think of like the Big Mac when it comes to the Big Mac index, but instead I'm gonna be using the meal deal index. Meal deal is a set of products that consists of a main, that could be like a sandwich, pasta or whatever, a drink, and a snack. As of recording this video, the meal deal is currently valued at £3.95, and this is from Sainsbury's, which is the place I go to the most. Now, $3.95 doesn't seem that much, but when you think about how much artists are actually getting paid, $3.95 is like the greatest payout that some of these artists may ever get. And in my opinion, I see it as the bare minimum that we should be willing to pay for the art from the artists that we love. Most people with the means to will be willing to pay this amount to, say, give food to the homeless. When you think of it that way, why can't we as people who do have means give that kind of money to artists that we actually love and support? So this begs the question, how many monthly listeners does an artist or a band need to get one meal deal? £3.95, or if you're in America, that is about £5.30 as of recording this video. I encourage you to write down in the comments how many monthly listeners do you think is required to get that kind of money to feed one band member. Remember, this is just for one meal deal. All right, so I hope you locked in your answers for how many listeners will it take for an artist or a band to be able to afford one meal deal, which we said is £3.95, or in dollars, $5.30. So luckily, in front of me, I have here a Spotify royalty calculator that is accurate to January 2026. So pretty up to date. We're on the latest version and we're gonna see the most up to date answers. To give an arbitrary number to start off this test, let's just say 1,000. So 1,000 monthly streams will get you $2.38. Now we know that's not enough. We can't even afford half a meal deal with that. So just to extrapolate this, let's say 2,000. 476. Okay, so we're still not there quite yet. Let's try a bit more. Okay, so 595, that's with 2,500 monthly listeners. It's a bit over the thing we need, but guess what? We have a bit of change left over to just, I guess, look at, because you can't really buy much with what will be left over, like 65 cents, pennies, nickels. I don't know what your currency is like in America. But now let's say you're a band of 4, and each of you wants a meal deal because they're so delicious. If by just deduction of timesing it by 4, we'll actually need 10,000 monthly listeners to afford 4 meal deals. That's all fine and dandy, but I don't know if you noticed one specific thing on the website. Did you catch it? That's right, the royalty share. Now, in an ideal world, every day is Bandcamp Friday and artists get all the royalties for themselves, they've earned it, but we don't live in that world and I don't think we ever will. Because everybody takes a cut. You got your record labels, you got your streaming services, you got your distribution platforms. If you want to make physical copies, well, that's another cost that's taking out of the overall value of the album and what you get as an artist. So I'm going to be super generous here and say maybe your royalty share is 50%. So now with 50% of your share now coming in, we're back down to $11.90. So to get it back up to the number we need to get a meal deal per person for a 4-person band. Okay, now we're up to 20,000 monthly listeners. It's a lot. Is it possible? Sure, it can be possible. It'll just take a lot more work. But the sad truth is, 50% is me being generous. There's artists who get it way worse. In some degree, some artists might go down as much as 10% of the royalty share that they actually receive. And if we were to do that, boom, 20,000 just gets you $4.76. We can't even get one meal deal now with a 10% royalty share. So then to actually extrapolate this back to a number where we can get 4 meal deals for a band of 4, we'll have to go higher. And I think if I'm right, 100,000. A band of 4 meal deals. And this is now, I hope you're understanding just how difficult it is for anybody to make money and how insulting it almost is for an artist when there's just this much they have to do to just get a meal. Get a meal. And if you're a solo artist, great, you got 4 meal deals. But if you're a band of 5, someone's just not getting a meal deal or someone is gonna have to share the sandwich. Yeah, it's brutal out there. It's brutal. Now, there is some light at the end of the tunnel because there's a new type of model that has been sort of talked about, and that is the individual listener model. How does this differ? Well, this model, as it says, takes the side of the consumer instead of the market. So I'm going to quickly re-demonstrate what that looks like. So once again, we're going to have our subscription. So S equals 10 pounds. And then once again, we're gonna have our pie here. Another really good circle. And finally, we are also going to have our 30% operation cost. So we have that and that. So say 30 pounds once again, OC. But there's something different here. Well, you see what was before that, all our money would go into a pool and then redistributed amongst the proportionate listeners of every artist ever on a streaming service. Now, we're just distributing our wealth to the artists that we as a consumer, as an individual, listen to. Hence the term individual listener model. So in reality, what's happening, I'm using green. So now we have a total of £7 going to the actual artists that we are listening to as consumers. If we were to go back to my example and let's say I listen to, let's say Tesseract. I'm gonna choose the band Tesseract. I really like them. And I chose for 1 month, a whole month, I'm going to exclusively listen to them nonstop. I'm not listening to any other artist, just Tesseract. I got a kick for them and now I can't stop listening to them. That would mean that a total of £7 is now going to Tesseract, which, as we discussed with the meal deal, that's almost 2 meal deals going to the band. That's big. Way more money than if it was to go to anybody else. All right, welcome back to the whiteboard. I swear this is the last time. To briefly talk about the AI problem and also the malicious uploads problem. With our current situation of using the market share model, which we've just discussed, our subscription money all going into one pool and then getting redistributed to every artist on the platform. If you're an artist that doesn't have a record label, there's a good chance you're self-distributing with places like DistroKid, TuneCore. You probably know them. Problem is, you as a good artist that actually has qualities and good talent, well, you're stuck as well with a whole bunch of people who are maliciously uploading content, using generative AI to create music, to quickly upload it, and make a quick bit of money. And those people are also in this bottom 80% because they're most likely also self-distributing. What ends up happening is with the influx of AI generated content that's been coming in, it's not been really shaking up the top 20%, because record labels are very good at screening artists and making sure that they're actually legitimate. But the bottom 80 is just it's the Wild West. Artists are coming in, diluting the pool for the bottom 80%, which means that if you're, let's say, a good artist, you are getting screwed. Or worst case, you'll have uploaders who put themselves under a name in the top 20%, make a bit of money, and then, as mentioned before, Spotify won't punish them by removing their account. They'll just give them their own account and still let them use the platform. Hello, I decided to be on the floor because I have free will. So one of the big reasons I left the music streaming behind was mainly for the ethical reasons of it. And I found out about this through an interview Fantano did with the key member of the band Shushu. I discovered that Spotify was using users' subscription money to invest into war drones. If you think about it for a second, that's kind of bad. That's really bad. I just thought to myself, you know what? I don't think I want my subscription money going to funding war. No, I don't feel like that's a good use of my money. And because of that, some bands have actually stepped away from Spotify, specifically Spotify, with bands like Shushu, Massive Attack, Deerhoof, and I'm sure more might follow suit. Even though I wasn't on Spotify at the time when I found this out, it just didn't sit right with me that these billion to trillion-dollar companies have just the ability to just use my money for very unethical things. Yeah, that was my main reason why I just left music streaming. Alright, so this next issue is something that I just have a really big pet peeve about. This is the ultimate first world problem. It's very much a non-issue, but it's an issue for me, so I'm going to talk about it. And that is this idea that offline is not offline. With one of the benefits, if you're willing to pay for the monthly subscription, is that you get to have the music offline.
So that was a fucking lie.
Every time I've had music downloaded offline, well, I still need internet to listen to the stuff. So it's not really offline. And then I did some research and I found out that all these files that you download that are set to offline mode are all locked. The reason being is every time you hit the play button, Spotify, Apple Music, whoever, does a check to see, one, do you have the right to listen to that? And two, is your account active? And three, that you're still logged in. And hence why you will get a delay when you hit the play button. This is the most non-issue ever, but I hate it. I hate the fact that when I hit the play button, it doesn't do what it's meant to do, which is to start the song. And on top of that, I hate the fact that I still need the internet even when I'm listening to music that is offline. I understand there's an offline mode, but it's just another thing to think about with streaming services. So for this section, I kind of want to make a whole other video about it to go more in detail because I have strong feelings about this in particular. But just the idea of ownership, I'm going to briefly say that it kind of just sucks when you don't own anything. The idea that a streaming service could easily just remove music on their own accord and then you have nothing you can do about it. And I think that kind of sucks. One day you could have our library and then maybe the platform goes bankrupt, something goes wrong, and it's all just gone. Whereas at least when you own something, well, you own it. You can do whatever the hell you want with it. But as I said, I want to make a whole video about this in the future. So if you want to potentially subscribe to have that video come out, yeah, that'd be pretty cool. So I've been away from music streaming for over 6 months now. And you must be wondering, what is it like on the other side of the wall, away from all this? Well, immediately, extreme FOMO. It was this weird level of anxiety that I had for that first, even couple of days, where I just felt like I was so out of the loop, and I was getting anxious that, oh my God, what if this band drops something? What if this artist drops something? And I'm not there. And just saying that out loud, it's pretty stupid to even think that way. So that was the immediate feeling. Definitely had a lot of FOMO. And then as days went by, I kind of wanted to go all out and hugely extreme about my separation with streaming. So I actually nuked my entire music library. I got rid of every song on it, and I was like, I want to start fresh, completely fresh. Make sure that all the music I'm listening to is for me and me alone. Afterwards, first thing I did was I found my old CDs that I still owned, re-burned them all into my computer, put them on with the music app, the Apple Music app. It's not attached to Apple Music itself, but it's just like sort of place to house your music. And then I went to my Bandcamp account because I bought a lot of music from artists via Bandcamp. Re-downloaded the ones I liked, back onto my iPhone. Yes, my library was a lot more condensed, but at least I knew one thing. All the music there was stuff I liked. It was also nice just the fact that I didn't have to deal with any of the internet bullshit, the weird playlists, the constant nagging to listen to the latest thing from the latest artist. And on top of that, I weirdly felt lighter because it was one less thing I was worrying about, because the FOMO had gone by this point. And my bank account felt a bit lighter because it was one less subscription I was having to worry about every month. Now, I did mention Bandcamp just there. In my opinion, if you actually want to support the artists that you like, I would highly recommend using Bandcamp, because when it comes to Bandcamp, they only take about a 15% cut of all proceedings going to artists. Two, the first Friday of every month is Bandcamp Friday. This is an initiative started back in COVID. But the first Friday of every month, they actually don't take a cut at all. And for the first time, you as a consumer can pay the artist directly without anybody else taking a cut. And on top of that, Bandcamp's whole thing is when you buy the music, you own the music. And you can download it as many times as you want. And they even give you different file types. So if you want to have a more condensed file type, that yes, maybe a bit more compressed, but it's small files, you can download MP3s, or maybe you want to have a fully lossless experience with music, you can also download FLAC as well, and you don't have to pay anything extra. It's great. One thing I noticed was there was one band who had removed their music from Bandcamp, but it didn't affect my ownership of the album that I had bought from that artist. So even though the band had removed their music, the music for my account was still there that I had purchased. So that's pretty cool as well. And finally, Bandcamp lets you technically pay as much as you want for artists. So going back to our whole meal deal index, you can actually take that step to making sure that each artist or each band member actually can have at least the amount to get one meal deal. So it's a big win there. And finally, music discovery is still something that I enjoy doing. I got a free account from the platform Deezer. Now I'm gonna leave a link in the description or somewhere here to the interview Fantano did with the CEO of Deezer, which is a really cool interview. But pretty much what I like about Deezer and why I personally chose it as my sort of semi-only platform is because they do take the steps and they do understand that AI is a problem on these kinds of platforms, and they actually tag AI generated music so that they don't pay those people out. The interview also discussed in more detail, of course, that Deezer potentially wants to move to a model of individual listenership. So the thing I was discussing before, where you as a listener, what you listen to, that's the people who get paid. That's something I can get behind. And if they do implement that in the future, maybe even me, I will go and pay a subscription to Deezer. And just overall, this whole experience of removing myself from music streaming has made it so I've just become more present when listening to music. I'm less distracted because there's nothing really distracting me. In a way, like listening to music now has slightly more friction to it because I don't have unlimited choice. It's made me really appreciate the artistic side of everything I'm listening to and really hone in on what is being presented to me. And overall, that's mentally just made everything a lot nicer. Anyway, so that wraps up this video. So super huge thanks for everyone watching. It has been a very, very long time since I've done a video, so if I'm shit, oh well. I'm pretty rusty right now. I don't know how to do this whole YouTube thing as well as I used to. And I do have plans to make videos in the future. I'm kind of changing completely everything about this channel, so it is what it is, because I've changed as a person. In 2 years, a lot can change. But as I said, thank you for watching and hope to see you around.